One American destroyer faced 4 battleships, 8 cruisers, and 11 destroyers in the most lopsided naval battle ever fought. The USS Johnston should have been vaporized in minutes. Instead, she held them off for over 2 hours and helped win the largest naval battle in human history. Commander Ernest Evans had told his crew on commissioning day that this would be a fighting ship, and he meant every single word. October 25, 1944. The sun rose over Samar Island in the Philippines, and the men of Taffy III thought they were going to have a quiet morning protecting General MacArthur's invasion beaches. Then the lookouts saw pagoda masts on the horizon. Japanese center force had gotten through. 4 battleships, including the monster Yamato, 6 heavy cruisers, 2 light cruisers, and 11 destroyers. They were 10 miles away and closing fast. Taffy III had 6 escort carriers, 3 destroyers, and 4 destroyer escorts. Escort carriers were basically cargo ships with flight decks. They weren't built for combat. The destroyers were outnumbered and outgunned by an insane margin. USS Johnston was closest to the enemy. Commander Evans didn't hesitate. He grabbed the intercom and gave the order that should have been a death sentence. All engines ahead flank, prepare to attack. Johnston charged alone at the Japanese armada while every other ship tried to run. The Fletcher-class destroyer could make 35 knots when she really pushed it, and Evans pushed every ounce of speed out of her. Japanese shells started falling around the ship at 7:10 a.m. Johnston couldn't even fire back yet. Her 5-inch guns had a maximum range of 9 miles, and the enemy battleships could hit targets at 20 miles. For 20 minutes, the crew watched massive geysers of water erupt around them, as shells the size of small cars missed by yards. Then they got close enough. Johnston opened up with every gun that could bear, firing 200 rounds in 5 minutes while zigzagging through the forest of enemy shells. Evans launched all 10 torpedoes at the heavy cruiser Kumano. At least 1 torpedo slammed into Kumano's bow, blowing it completely off and knocking her out of the battle. Then Johnston's luck ran out. 3 14-inch shells from battleship Congo hit within seconds of each other. The first one punched through the deck and exploded in the engine room, killing everyone inside instantly. The second hit destroyed the aft gun mount. The third took out a chunk of the bridge. Before the crew could even react, 3 more 6-inch shells hammered into the ship. One sailor later described it as like a puppy being smacked by a truck. The explosions threw Commander Evans across the bridge. Shrapnel tore through his body, severing 2 fingers on his left hand and shredding his shirt off his back. The ship lost steering control. The rear guns went silent. The gyro compass was destroyed. Johnston was crippled, on fire, and alone in the middle of the Japanese fleet. Evans wrapped his mangled hand in a rag and kept giving orders. At 7:50 a.m., Admiral Sprague ordered all destroyers to make a torpedo attack. Johnston had already fired every torpedo she had. Evans didn't care. He grabbed the radio and said they'd go in with the other destroyers and provide gunfire support. The ship was running on 1 engine. Half the weapon systems were dead. Steering had to be done manually by shouting orders down to men physically turning the rudder. Evans took Johnston back into the firestorm anyway. The destroyer charged battleship Congo at point-blank range and fired 30 more shells before breaking off. Some of those rounds actually hit the massive ship, doing almost nothing but forcing Congo to take evasive action. Johnston wasn't alone anymore. USS Heermann, USS Howell, and destroyer escort Samuel B. Roberts saw what the crippled destroyer was doing and charged in behind her. These were the small boys, the tin cans nobody thought could stand up to capital ships. Samuel B. Roberts was so tiny that when Japanese shells landed near her, the water columns were taller than her mast. But she kept firing. Howell took 40 hits before she went down, still shooting. Heermann somehow survived, despite sailing between battleships at ranges where the enemy couldn't miss. The 4 little ships created absolute chaos in the Japanese formation. Cruisers and battleships were turning, dodging, losing track of targets. The escort carriers were launching planes armed with whatever they had. Some pilots made dummy runs with empty guns just to distract the enemy. By 9:45 a.m., Johnston was dead in the water. The ship had taken so much damage that she couldn't move, couldn't steer, and most of her guns were silent. But she could still fight. The forward 5-inch gun was still operational, and the crew kept firing at any Japanese ship that got close, trying to draw attention away from the carriers. Japanese destroyer Yukikaze came alongside to finish her off. Witnesses reported that the Japanese captain ordered his crew to salute as Johnston slipped beneath the waves. Commander Evans was last seen on the fantail, shouting steering orders through a hatch to the men below, even as the ship capsized. He went down with his command at 10:10 a.m. Admiral Kurita looked at the carnage around him and made a decision that still baffles historians. His center force was winning. Taffy 3 was broken. The landing beaches were wide open, but his force had taken damage from those insane destroyer attacks. Planes were swarming everywhere, and he thought American fleet carriers must be nearby because who would defend with just destroyers and escort carriers? At 9:20 a.m., he ordered the retreat. Japan's last major naval offensive was over. The price was devastating. Johnston, Howell, Samuel B. Roberts, and escort carrier Gambier Bay were gone. Over 1,000 American sailors died, but they'd stopped the most powerful surface fleet Japan could field. Fleet Admiral Nimitz later said the victory was nothing short of special dispensation from the Lord Almighty. He wasn't wrong. 77 years later, explorer Victor Vescovo found Johnston resting on the ocean floor at 21,180 feet deep. That's 4 miles down, deeper than the Titanic, in crushing darkness where the pressure would instantly kill a human. The hull number 557 was still visible on the twisted wreckage. For a brief moment in 2021, she held the record as the deepest shipwreck ever discovered, until Vescovo found Samuel B. Roberts even deeper a year later. The small boys rest together in the deepest graves on Earth. Johnston's discovery brought the story back into the world, the story of a ship that charged when she should have run, that fought when she should have sunk, and that inspired other ships to do the impossible. One destroyer changed the course of the largest naval battle in history. 141 of her 327 crew members survived, pulled from the water after hours floating in shark-infested seas. Commander Ernest Evans received the Medal of Honor posthumously. The citation barely captures what happened that morning, how a single ship decided that running wasn't an option, how courage became contagious, how the smallest vessels in the fleet stood up to the biggest and won. Sometimes in war, the smallest ships cast the longest shadows. USS Johnston proved that shadows can be darker than battleship steel and deeper than 4 miles of ocean.